Welcome to the At the Races Jumps preview show in association with our friends from talkSPORTBET. Here's what you can look forward to. We can promise you some strong opinions.
I know what I'd do. I'd get the camera and lamp it over some lad's head. I mean, if he was stupid enough to go with the public and run him that day, he'd probably have made bits of him.
We'll unearth some exciting new talent to look forward to.
Just one of those horses that you see every few years. Absolutely took the eye out of my head.
And we'll give you some ante-post pointers for a long-range bet.
I can't really see much ante-post at this minute to touch him, to be honest. I think he's miles better than everything else.
So let us get stuck into our National Hunt preview with our stellar cast. We'll come to you in a moment, Matt. But the man, the myth, the legend, great trainer, great raconteur, great personality, the man who partnered Dawn Run to all the races that mattered. Tony Mullins is with us. Welcome, Tony.
Oh, that's harsh, isn't
Thank
it?
you.
What a harsh way to start, Tony. Bring up Dawn Run in the first sentence.
15 out of 21.
Well, yeah,
You're on board, I think, round about that?
I think about 15 races.
You're basically her jockey.
French Champion Hurl was exciting,
Yes.
and the match, to me, was a race never equalled.
People forget about that. Sorry, we've gone off on a tangent here, haven't we,
Yeah.
about Dawn Run.
Producer already be getting worried.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that, the match, the famous match. Mr. Matt Chapman is with us as well.
I'm so pleased to be here. Obviously, sometimes we expect the likes of Kevin Blake to be here. Apparently, he's still looking for Yatakataki on our Riffer, who's somewhere in the middle of Paris at the moment, still trying to negotiate the bend.
We needed no form expertise at all.
No.
So.
But it's great to have Tony here. Obviously, Willie wasn't available, but it's great to have the great Tony Mullins. And also, of course, we shouldn't forget, because we talk about the great racing families over here, the Bowens, of course, who bred lots of top jockeys, and the Gary Moore, of course, is like the Galileo of jockeys. But Tony himself, in Danny, has produced an outstanding rider with a lot of character as well. I kind of almost thought you might turn up in dreadlocks today, but what do you make of the old Danny's hair at the moment? Has he had them out, the dreadlocks? Have they come out now, or are they still in?
I think they were only a fortnightly thing, but, you know, during the quiet season, I'd say he was getting bored. Danny is a lad who likes a lot of action.
Thank goodness the jumping's back.
Yeah, he's back busy now and he hasn't time to do his hair.
He's really good, though, isn't he? He's a really good jockey. Very
dedicated. Absolutely. People don't realise the dedication. He must get it from me, I think. But
all those nights out.
He starts 6:30. He's a fitness fanatic. You know, you can see him on his YouTube or whatever you call it, Twitter or
Instagram.
Instagram probably is his main one, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
But he doing his push-ups and pull-ups with lead bags on his back and that. He's fitness fanatic.
Again, taking after you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I tell you what, we should kick on.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to start with the British Bank.
What, you mean talk about horses, Sean? This is where you're making the mistake.
What we're going to do it kind of by division. So if we start with the champion sort of elite hurdle division, the 2-mile hurdle division, the champion hurdle division, if you like, we've got to start with Constitution Hill. It's a strange situation we find ourselves in. We only saw him on Boxing Day last year, and then we didn't see him again, unfortunately, due to various issues. Latest bulletins are positive. This time last year, he'd have been about 4-9, 1-2 at this stage for the champion hurdle. You can now back him at odds against 7-4 or 6-4, something like that. Well, is he a bet, Tony? Could he be a bet, or would you wait?
Certainly. Look, there's no disputing he's the best, has been seen for many years, probably since Istabrack. You know, and Willie's had some lovely champion hurl winners since, but this lad is superior at his best. So, fantastic horse to watch. He jumps, he's faster than every other horse, ground doesn't matter, left-handed, right-handed, flat track, undulating tracks. Nothing seems to bother him, he is the best. And he's trained by the best, so let's hope that Nicky can work his magic like he did with Sprinter Sacre. I know Sprinter Sacre had missed a couple of seasons and it was heart trouble and that, but he brought him back expertly.
Yeah.
And if there's any man in England can bring him back, it's Nicky Henderson. So he's in the right hands and he is the best.
Does that lull us into a bit of a false sense of security? Because what happened with Sprinter Sacre was extraordinary. You know, I mean, it was an emotional day when he came back and won like that. It was an amazing thing to do. But actually, it doesn't normally work out that way, does it? When a horse has been out for a length of time, it's pretty rare that they come back as good as as they ever were.
It's pretty rare you have a trainer of Nicky Henderson's ability. People, you see, and I don't know why he hops to the public the whole time when they were giving out, when he non-runner this horse because ground wasn't suitable somewhere last year, and he started taking stick for it.
Yeah.
I just couldn't believe it. I mean, he's looking after his horse, everyone's giving out, and he's apologising. I know what I'd do. I'd get the camera and lamp it over some lad's head. I mean, if he was stupid enough to go with the public and run him that day, he'd probably have made bits of him.
Yes.
Nicky, stop defending yourself. There's no need to.
It's interesting you say that, Tony, though, because Hendo has almost become slightly a caricature figure, I think, to certainly certain groups of people on social media. Like, there are lots of people who are fully expecting never to see Constitution Hill again. But in Ireland, is there a huge respect, perhaps, that there should be over here, but perhaps there isn't, do you feel? Would Willie, for instance, I had to bring up your godforsaken brother, but would he look at someone like Henderson as you know, like a Sir Alex Ferguson over here in the UK sort of thing, like give him that respect?
You see, it would bring me back to a memory of years ago. I remember when Desert Orchid won the Gold Cup on the heavy ground. And we came out of the way, I did anyway, to clap him up along. And I'll never forget that day. I think there was more Irish people clapped him into the number one than there was English people.
Yeah.
You know, the Irish people appreciate a real good horse or a real good trainer. And they can make jokes about them and all that, but the deep respect there for the real champions, and Nicky Henderson is one of those.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's anyone in Ireland would disrespect his ability, and they might make jokes, but Nicky Henderson has earned a respect in the National Hunt game that is equal to anyone that ever trained.
You used to work on the newspapers starting out in this game, Matt. There was a time when trainers like Nicky Henderson, go back to David Nicholson, for example, they wouldn't speak to people like you and me very, very often. They'd keep themselves. They wouldn't get involved in that kind of answering criticism in the public. And yet Nicky Henderson he's made himself super available in the last few seasons. And from what you're saying, that can backfire.
But I think those closest to Nicky Henderson, the Michael Buckleys of this world, would argue that Hendo almost can't help himself. And I think Paul Nicholls is the same. Like, Paul Nicholls, you can wind Nicholls up in a fraction. In fact, I did just that at Chepstow, and it wasn't on air, but within a millisecond, he'd gone off like a firecracker, because he obviously was drawing a blank at the 2 days at Chepstow that you expect him to explode. And after I was there with Fitzy on the Friday, and after about 4 races, he 2 or 3 favourites beaten or whatever, and I said to him, well, Willie Mullins isn't going to be very worried about what's going on here. and he gave me a look, and then he went off like an express train, and they can't help themselves, I think. And you're absolutely right. If you go back to the Duke and Captain Tim Forster and those kind of days, you weren't getting many quotes out of them. But it was a different world then, remember. You didn't have social media. And with Hendo, you know, he will cry about horses just talking about them. Tears will come down his eyes. That's probably where tears do come. He is so passionate about it that he actually can't stop himself. And that probably is slightly different with Willie, because Willie can stop himself quite a lot and probably isn't quite as accessible these days, or he would say, well, have a word with Patrick, or Patrick would take over. But with Hendo, he can't help himself. But coming back to your original question, which yes, I notice our valued guest didn't actually answer, would you back Constitution now at 6-4 with talkSPORTBET, or 7-4 perhaps out there in places? And the answer to that clearly is no, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, why do you need to? I mean, how much would you have to have on to make it worthwhile? I mean, do you want 20 quid on to win, 55 or whatever, or 50 if it's 6-4?
You know why you do it, Matt, because when it comes to March and he goes off at 2-11, you can say, well, I took the 6-4 back.
But you'd hope in a week of racing. I mean, it is down to odds, isn't it? And the thing with a horse like this is, I think you would get the same buzz cheering him home, whether you've backed him or not backed him. If this horse wins by a hurdle and destroys the opposition, everyone will be buzzing whether they backed him or not.
Are we giving sufficient respect, going back to your word respect there, to the opposition? State Man, 10 times a Grade 1 winner, wins nearly every time he turns up Tony. Is he getting the credit he deserves this horse just because
funny.
he's been beaten once by Constitution?
I was over in Willie's the other morning and he walked past me, Stateman. My God, he has a belly on him. He's like a hunter, so he is. And I'm just thinking to myself, you won a Champion Hurl last March and you're going to try and win one next March. And he had a belly on him. But he was in great form and trotted off past me. And I'm sure he's a very solid horse. But I mean, you have Constitution Hill. If he comes out and whether it's the Fighting Fifth now or the Christmas Hurl, if he shows his well-being, bang, 11-4 on straight away.
Yes, yeah.
Is there a little bit that Stateman is See the Stars and Constitution Hill is Frankel? Is there a little bit of that, do you think? Like, Stateman's solid.
For me.
In fact, I'd say See the Stars was more exciting than Stateman. Wouldn't you? Stateman's not very exciting, is he?
Well, I mean, Stateman is a Champion Hurl winner.
But he's dull.
Binocular was.
Well, he's won the same number of champion hurdles, hasn't he, as Constitution Hill?
Yeah, but he's boring, isn't he? There's nothing... Or look at... OK, he's boring at Cheltenham, but he's exciting at Leopardstown. Is that fair?
Yeah, he's a very good horse that is just unfortunately around the same time as Constitution Hill.
He's acceleration.
He's a potential champion.
But is he? That's the thing, Tony. Is he?
Is who?
Well,
Constitution Hill.
No, he's Stateman. Like, what has he actually beaten when he wins those Irish champion events?
Hurdles, but he's won the English one
He's
as
the
well.
reigning champion hurdler.
Yeah.
And he's in
Yeah, but it
double
was
figures
rubbish,
of
wasn't
great
it?
ones.
The champion hurdle in 2024 was rubbish.
Well, who was missing?
Lossiemouth.
So, OK, so Lossiemouth. After winning the Mares last year, the quote from Willie was, I think the plan is we'll go for the champion hurdle this time round. Is that the vibe? Do you think she'll definitely be trained for a champion hurdle this time, or will they still keep their options open?
Well, I don't have much chats with Willie about horses, but individual horses. But I know it's always been his thing was to put each horse in their own division, and unless they really step out and look like they're going to. I would say if Constitution Hill becomes the banker that everyone is hoping he would, that Lossiemouth would be back into the Mayor's Hurl where she'll be superior in that, and let Stateman take on your man, and if he's able to beat him. Yeah. I think that has been Willie's way, from what I've seen. Put them in their own.
Let's say here's a question for you as a jockey, Tony. Let's say she does run in the champion hurdle, and you're Paul Townend, and you can ride her getting 7, or you can ride Stateman. Which would you choose?
There's a difficult one now. But, well, it's not a difficult one really, because I'm quite sure if it's only as close as that she'll run in the Mayor's Hurl. I can only see her running in the champion hurl if Willie thinks she's a certainty.
So
that's my opinion. I don't think he'd go there and say, well, not too bad after finishing second in the champion hurl to Constitution. I'd say he'd be sick.
That's a grade 1 gone begging.
People always think that we know, or at least people in the press kind of know what's going on. Well, at the end of September, 30th of September to be precise, I sent Rich Ritchie a WhatsApp message that says, are you able to stay at this stage where the Gaelic being aimed at the King George and Lossie at the champion hurdle rather than the mares? Well, you can guess the response. Way with lots of A's too early, said Rich. However, he did add, on Lossie, we have already said she is a champion hurdle mare, we think.
Yeah.
So clearly, they are hoping that. But I think actually Tony's hit the nail on the head. If there's not much seemingly between these two, and there's a problem here, because there's every chance Stateman's going to look really good until he gets back to Cheltenham. So it makes it harder to choose. But if Lossie has just come out and won everything on the bridle and looking like a monster, and we know she probably improves £10 at Cheltenham, whereas Stateman, you could say, probably runs £10 below his best at Cheltenham, then I think he'd be on Lossie. But the other, of course, question, if Constitution Hill does win the Fighting Fifth, whoever turns up, to take him on, because there won't be any Not So Sleepy anymore to judge him by. But if he does win the Fighting Fifth by a distance and then does win the Christmas Hurdle by a distance, you've got to think that Willie will think, well, neither of them are going to beat Constitution Hill unless he's injured. It's kind of keep them entered. And then if you're Willie Mullins, what do you say to Rich Ritchie? Look, you can either finish second in the champion hurdle or you can win the mares. And I think 99 times out of 100, they'll say, well, let's go and win the mares. Because I've heard Willie say this in the past, like, when you've got a big owner like that, the one thing you have to do is find them one winner at Cheltenham. Has to have a winner. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be the Cheltenham Festival selling, claiming hurdle, but it has to win it.
Don't have one of those yet.
And also remember that if Cheltenham had done their job properly, and I'm sure Tony will disagree with me because all the horsey people will, because they just want opportunities, but Lossiemouth shouldn't even have the choice. If they'd just done the right thing with the mare's hurdle so that a Lossiemouth cannot run in it, then she will be forced into the champion hurdle. But because Cheltenham didn't have the kahunas to do the right thing, then Lossiemouth does have a choice.
Now, what do you feel is the right thing?
Well, the right thing is either to move the mare's hurdle to a different time, either earlier in the season or later in the season, or just make it a 0 to 150, make it a grade 2, and then force the champion hurdle mares into the champion hurdle. Because if you're rated above 150, you should be taking.
I don't want to spend too much time on this because lots of experienced horsemen and women have explained to you why you're wrong, and why the mares division has been so important for the industry and
don't be stupid.
And the breed. It's less. I can see why punters struggle to warm to having more mares races and stuff like that. But it's been a success story in terms of.
It's been a success story for the breeding industry. But,
in what way?
People are
when
buying
I
and selling
had
more
brood
mares.
mares.
What, to win the champion? They got no chance. It's a ridiculous idea.
Yeah, no, but when I had 10 mares, we'd say 10 years ago, if I had 4 filly foals, right, you could write them off, put them in a corner and say, right, you might be some use to a breeding in 8 years' time. Now, you don't have to pick up the foal's tail when it's born to see whether it's a male or female because they're equal value.
Yeah.
So it has double the value and you know, for the breeding stock, which is what we're not talking about here.
We're doing classic national hunt season stuff, which was spending far too much time on our first section. Just before we leave it, I was reading a piece, I think it was in the Irish Independent the other day, Tony, and by Brendan O'Rourke, who had this to say at the end of his piece. It was a piece about trainer Willie Mullins. It says, Willie Mullins has achieved unbelievable heights. There's only one possible remaining ambition, to train a horse to win both the Champion Hurdle and the Gold Cup. Only one trainer has ever done that, and you know who that is.
Yes.
Because it's the old man, and it was with Dawn Run, and nobody's done it since. And
before.
Or before. Could Ballyburn do that? Is there any chance you'd be tempted to stay hurdling with Ballyburn, win a Champion Hurdle, go to the Gold Cup?
Well, I wouldn't. You know, I just don't see. He's a Flemonsfirth bred by Beecher Stud. You know, Bobby McCarthy bred him, and I don't see him as a champion hurdler if Constitution Hill and Lossiemouth are at their height.
Okay.
He'd have to improve for me to get in there.
Fine. Let's put it. Her record is safe. The mayor's record is safe.
Just finally on this, I mean, look, outside of Constitution Hill, Lossiemouth and State Man, it's hard to see a surprise in this race. The only young horse who might come through could be Sagino, I think, who obviously missed Cheltenham, or the big Cheltenham, beat Burdett Road in the Triumph Hurdle trial, went to entry and was workmanlike, didn't jump that well, but had been off the track. People often say that it's hard for the 5-year-olds, but it's only hard for the rubbish 5-year-olds. If you have a really good 5-year-old, it's not impossible.
I love that one. It's hard for the 5-year-olds. It's exactly what you said. It's hard for the 5-year-olds that are not good enough.
Yeah. But if you have a good 5-year-old, it's not impossible. And Sagino did look really good, although, again, he could technically go chasing because he's a great big chasing type. But outside of that, it's very hard to see anything that could upset State Man or Lossiemouth, even if Constitution Hill wasn't there, because at the end of the day, as Tony says, these are really good horses, and there's a small crop to choose from.
Mystical Power?
Do you think that would go chasing, Mystical Power?
I wouldn't be surprised if Lossiemouth went off to the mares. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the second one in Willie's bow.
What's the old pensioner that they've been running in the Champion Hurdle for the last 3 years, or whatever, the Rich Richie one who Patrick Mullins always rides?
Oh, yeah.
Charger.
Yeah, no, well,
he could turn into a charger.
He could, yeah. Mystical Power is a very good horse.
OK, so we throw Mystical Power into the mix. We mustn't forget that. I think what we're all saying is we need to wait until Newcastle and see what Constitution Hill turns up.
State Man's what? Around, what was he on our board? Around 4? Oh, was he 3-1? OK. Well, you can get 5-1 out there at the moment, State Man. If he wouldn't be the worst each way bet.
He's a filthy each way ante-post.
Yeah, because he is going to get there unless he gets really badly injured.
Okay.
He's going to run. There's no alternative for him.
One thing we know, that he's going nowhere else.
Yeah, and he could well be unbeaten going into the Champion Hurdle, and there might not be Constitution Hill. Get your money back each way, 1, 2, 3.
Keeping him out of the 3 in what might be a 5 or 6 runner
Impossible.
race.
Impossible, Boyce.
That's an account closer, but good luck with that if you're following Matt in. Let's move on. The Champion Chase Division, the 2-mile Chase Division. Normally I'd start with the Arkle looking for next year's Champion Chaser. Interestingly, John Bon is the favourite currently. This is a much more open looking market for this. John Bon. I'm going to start with you on this, Matt.
Okay.
Are you a John Bon man or not? I can't remember whether you were in the John Bon last year.
I love John Bon, and I think Nico de Boinville has. I thought at Aintree they really gel. I think they gel, as Nico has, in fact, with all these McManus horses since he now gets the chance to ride them. And we know that Nicky's got some real good youngsters, and it must be exciting. Nico now doesn't have to think, well, I'm never going to sit on them, and now he is, because basically he's JP's go-to man now. But I don't think... look, the right race for John Bon is the Ryanair, but if you've spent a fortune on John Bon and done what he's done so far, I don't think JP McManus is going to be that fussed in running him in the Ryanair, and I'll come on to that race a little later on. So while I like John Bon, I don't like him in the Champion Chase, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love John Bon. I really loved him in the Arkle.
How much do you love him, Sean? You don't love him, do you?
I've gone off him. Which coincides with...
It's lucky your missus doesn't get this kind of treatment, doesn't he? Like, one good meal, yeah, I love you, honey. Not so good meal, no, you're out, hun. Off you go.
The current Mrs. Boyce is cooking excellently at the moment. Which brings us on to El Fabiola. Part of the reason I really liked John Bon when they made it in the Arkle for the first time, I thought John was the safer and the better jumper. Now, I was proved right eventually. It took a long time, but that frailty with El Fabiola and the jumping, it
was disappointing.
There's a problem there. But now he's a price as a result of that.
Now, you see, it's very hard to... If you go back a couple of seasons there, Footpad won the Arkle. The greatest display of jumping that I've probably ever seen from a novice. So I said, man, he's one for the Champion Chase next year. Comes out the following year. He didn't forget how to jump, so he must have had some sort of an injury, you know. So... because he couldn't jump in his open class season. So you have to watch all these things. It's a bit like Constitution Hill. We know how good he is. He has to come back and show it in a race, and then away we go. The likes of El Fabiolo now, he has to tidy up his jumping, which he very well could do. Gaelic Warrior, for me, is a fantastic horse, but just seems to get beat in Cheltenham at a regular...
Doesn't always help himself, does he, with the way he uses himself. And
the massive horse here who missed last season, didn't he, Energamine?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But with a hind leg injury, which is not normal, one that, when they hurt their front legs, the weight-bearing legs, as I call them, it can be very hard to come back. But hind leg injuries, very often they come back. So Energamine, to me, was a genuine champion. So
that's my take. If he'll be 11 next year.
Yeah, but that's the problem, isn't it?
That's the concern. But it's been...
Has it?
Moscow Flyer 11 when he won his...
Well, twice. You'd probably ridden...
Twice as an 11-year-old.
No, Moscow Flyer, but do you know the other one? Because you probably rode against the other one.
I would imagine Adsworth Boy, was it?
No, I don't. I'll put 1976. Were you riding then?
Just about start. Skymass.
Yeah, won it as an 11-year-old and a 12-year-old. But the gist of the matter is, this is not a horse for this is not a race for pensioners.
No, normally it isn't. But going back to Tony's point, when you look at that list, he's the true champion on that list. To me, Energamine is the quality,
and
the
a lot of
super
horses,
high-quality horse.
Why it's not a one for pensioners, this is the fastest race, the most exciting race of the season for me.
Yeah.
And the reason they don't last till 11, this is about speed and precision. And if Energamine, who hasn't been heavily raced, if he comes back, to me, he's the best horse looking down there. Barry Connell has Marine National.
Well, that's the dark horse, isn't it? If he can get him back.
He's very, very good.
How many times has he completed over fences? Twice? 3 times?
I think only 3 times, and
it's not a lot, is it?
No, but he was very, very good to jump.
Yeah.
And no, Marine National would come into it, but for me, I'll obliterate them all. I'll take the 11-year-old. If Energumene comes back, he wins.
But I think we saw, you can correct me here if you want, Tony, but I think we saw the difference between Barry, who is obviously got pots of money, has come through the ranks, clearly can get the job done both as a jockey in his own style back in the day. We always used to take the mick of him on the old At the Races when we were showing Barry Connell riding. And clearly he can train, and no doubt he's got a good team behind him. But someone said to me that what he did with Marine National, Willie Mullins would never have done. And that was, I think he won the 1 novice chase, maybe 2, but I think the one went straight into Grade 1 company. And basically, Willie put a whole posse in that race, because I think Mullins knew this is almost impossible what you're trying to do with this horse. I'll chuck 3 or 4 at you and just show you how difficult it is. And I just think that Marine National has to almost start again.
Yeah.
And to suddenly go and win a champion chase, to be that good a jumper, I think is unlikely myself. I just think this is too specialist for what he's trying to do.
He's a very good horse, though. He was awesome, wasn't he?
I would agree with Sean. I agree with what you're saying, but just remember he's a very, very good horse. This horse bolted.
But he's not up against mugs.
Well, he's not up against an absolute champions either. I mean, they're well close together. I think John Bonn is very beatable. Gaelic Warrior seems to be very beatable every year in Cheltenham.
That's it.
And Energumene is coming back and Captain Guinness is getting as old as you.
Yeah, Captain Guinness is
Coming from...
Gaelic, this time last, you were a Gaelic Warrior man, weren't you?
Yeah, I put up Gaelic Warrior for everything.
Except the Arkle.
No. I put him up for the Arkle, absolutely 100%. I thought it was an absolute good thing in the Arkle, and he was after about 2 fences. I don't think it was a great race. I think Gaelic Warrior is beatable. And the other thing is, I mean, you have to say that if Gaelic Warrior has run in the King George, now King George horses, of course, 2-milers have gone back to the champion chase after the King George. But if there was one race early season you'd think Gaelic Warrior is going to be lined up for, it's the King George. I mean, he's won over 3 miles over hurdles. He goes better right-handed from all that we know, for all that he won the Arkle and he's won the handicap at Cheltenham, but he is better right-handed. It just depends whether that changes him as a horse going forward.
Would you not, as a trainer, have to make a decision about that? Pretty much now, Tony, about how you're going to campaign him?
Not really. I remember Tom Taff winning the King George with Kicking King and going on to win the Gold Cup. And
Barnbrook again ran in the King George.
Who?
Barnbrook again ran in the King George against Desi.
But he never won a Gold Cup.
No.
For me, Gaelic Warrior, as far as I know, he is being trained for the King George. But his little grey warrior, I love that, Ilite Tomp. He's going to be an outsider for the King George, but he's the one I have a few quid on, or would have a few quid on.
Well, of course, you're in the family that tried to kill off Gaelic Warrior, aren't you? When Daddy, tried to assassinate Patrick Mullins on Gaelic Warrior.
Don't worry, we'll get a clatter at him later. But Ilite Tomp is a very good horse.
I enjoyed that. You're Danny for a moment, and I'm Patrick Mullins. Do that again, and I tell you, I'll take you into Daddy's office.
And then Danny came on yesterday and won the Munster National, beating one of Willie's horses on one of Willie's old horses. He won it for Eric McNamara yesterday, and Willie and Rich Ritchie were second. So I think Patrick wasn't there to stop him coming through on the inner.
You've taken us on to the staying chase division, I think, Tony. So
well, you see, that's where the King George is sort of the halfway between the two, because you can have a speed horse to win the King George, or you could get beaten by a stamina horse, So, to me, Ilite Tomp is just there behind them as an absolute dead reliable horse. He's not a big horse, but he's a heart of a lion. Jumps well. I'd say you could pop him up or down a few furlongs and he's always there. So he's just one that I think will be value all through the season, because
Slightly
we have all
underestimated.
these horses that are the sexy looking ones in the particular races. But this lad is always there. If any of them make a mistake, he can beat them.
Yeah.
Okay. Strong word for Il était temps. Should we move on into the staying chase territory?
I think that's always a good way for a show to progress.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's have a look at the King George market. There's only one horse going to win this, obviously, and that's the French horse, Il est Français.
Oh, I don't rate him.
Pick them up and carry them.
Don't be silly.
Around Kempton. He's the most exciting horse anywhere in Britain, Ireland or France this year for me, Il est Français, by a margin. But this show's not about me, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, yeah. And
Well, sorry, Tony, but don't put yourself down, Boyce. There'll be plenty of people tuning in, wouldn't there, Tony? Just for the Boyce man.
You're not excited by this horse? Have you seen him?
yeah, he was fantastic, and his 2 runs, was it the 2 French runs, was it?
Yeah. Well, and also what he did at Kempton in the Novice last year, and they went round quicker than the King George. And he does it so easily. And then he flopped last spring, so he didn't go for the Grand Stakes.
Yeah, so what was the reason for that, or what was the reason given? Was it injury? Was it a bad blood?
What I heard Noel George say was there was a few little things, and we got to the bottom of it. I've never heard anything conclusive, but he had his comeback run the other day in France, and he was brilliant.
He was okay.
He's brilliant. He dances around.
Yeah, he's a
huge, beautiful horse.
He's
Jumps
potentially brilliant, but I hate one that throws a stinker in the middle. That's,
Yes.
I'm, you know, he had the hair standing on the back of my head with his run in the Carter Star. Is that what they call it? Feltham now.
Yeah.
And it was unreal. And of course, went the next day. I said, "Wait till you see this lad." And the next thing, he wobbles home.
Yeah.
You know, if you go back to the champions, they often get beat, but they don't wobble home.
Yeah. Something went wrong that day.
I know, obviously something went wrong, but
It's interesting that those horses who look like they're doing it very easily, but they're clogging.
Yes, they can
times.
empty.
They're doing tons, aren't they? It doesn't look like they are, but they must be doing tons.
I mean, if you look back at all the greats, Sea Pigeon, Istabrack, they never trailed in 9th.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They won, or they just got beat because the ground was a bit wrong, or maybe his blood was down a bit.
Yeah.
But a horse that can throw in this big stinker,
Okay.
they're not bankers for me. Even though I appreciate what you're saying, that he's an absolute champion on his day.
He's the most. I'm very excited. You this time last year were similarly excited about a horse. This is a quote. "This is the new champion. I think he'd actually beat Galopin des Champs in the Gold Cup. JP has never owned one like this, and he owned Istabrack and a lot of good horses. He's out of this world, this horse." Do you remember who said that?
Fact to file.
You said that about Fact.
Yeah, but that was probably said about midnight after Tony had a kip during Thursday as they got to the next part of the Cheltenham preview night.
Sean.
He then had 2 pints and someone said, "Say so," and Tony just thought, to heck with it. Let's just say something silly.
The difference between you and me, Sean, and Matt is that we stick by our convictions. And he duly cantered up and was the superior novice last year. Now he's moving into the real league, so this could be, a very tough. Like Galopin des Champs is another best mate, or potentially another best mate type horse. So he's going to have to really step up. I was a little, now I won't say disappointed, but I was a little less than enamoured with him in the RSA. I thought when he came off the bend, now you'll see what I'm talking about. Now, and he did go away and he won 3 or 4 lengths, I think, did he? I thought he'd open up 15 lengths and we'll say, now, Galopin des Champs, move over, here's the new lad. So he still has to prove it.
Do you think he'll stay a Gold Cup trip rather than a King George trip? Do you think he'd stay the Gold Cup trip?
I remember an owner one day was on the stand and the trainer was watching the race, and when the horse hit the front, the owner was going, "Will he stay? Will he stay?" And the trainer was trying to get to look at the race and he was getting very annoyed, and he turned back and he says, "He'll stay as long as you stay paying his training fees."
I see what you're saying, though. He's not an absolute I don't think Il est Francais is either, actually, coming back to that. So I think these are horses that are bullying inferiors. But when they are eyeballed by a Galopin des Champs, or maybe a Fast or Slow, or maybe a Grey Dawning, or even maybe an I Am Maximus, who isn't talked about in Gold Cup terms at all, but let's face it, absolutely bolted up in the Grand National. When they're eyeballed by these proper fighters, with these natural bridle winning horses by 20 lengths, will they look these horses in the eye and say, yeah, I'll go through whatever barrier I have to go through?
That's what makes a champion. I mean, when you look down to it, to me, Galopin des Champs is the champion. Factifile is coming out of his novice season. He has to prove that he can do it with the big boys.
He's quite short, isn't he? Right on the heels of Galopin des Champs. Given what you've said, you've slightly cooled, haven't you?
I've cooled after the RSA. I expected him to go away in the RSA to win 15 lengths. Yeah. Now, he did.
So hold on. So having obliterated me 5 minutes ago about not being a man of my word, you sit here and say you're not a man of your word.
No.
How fickle can you be?
Up to the RSA, I said you are the one that's going to beat
He meant it when he said it, but the information has changed.
Only an Irishman could carry on trying to defend himself.
The information has changed since, as Boyce just said. And,
okay, so
from what's in front of me then Fast or Slow, a brilliant horse around Punchestown, or that's the way it seems. I don't see him in the picture with these horses.
Really? In the Gold Cup, he was cruising when he just unseated, though, wasn't he? Cruising.
Yeah, maybe.
Easy to unseat at Cheltenham, Tony.
Yeah. It has happened in the past.
Top of that hill. Oh.
And then Jerry Colombi is under.
He's down.
Into the way you're thinking. An improving horse. Like, I mean, what he was racing off the middle 140, so up to his second last run. So he has 30 pounds, 35 pounds to find. I don't see it in him. Corbett's Cross is a very good horse, but 15 pounds below these. Ilité France is potentially a horse that puts in a stinker.
Yeah. I've had a speculative bet on him for the Gold Cup in the hope that he turns up. But there's no guarantee he will, because the plan last year, I'm sure, was to go for the Grand Steep rather than the Gold Cup.
Ilité France.
Yeah, and then swap the next year.
I'd be more interested in him in the Champion Chase than the Gold Cup. Just freewheeling on the front end, but I'm sure that's not going to happen either. The thing about these Gold Cup horses is, what I love about Galopin des Champs now is that he's turned into a horse that if some nutters went off, he can sit off it. If there's no pace, he could run from the front if he wants to. He can do everything. Tactics aren't important. Factifile, you kind of know already he's going to be strangled out the back, cruising along, doing what quite a lot of JP horses do, which is...
That's what I was going to say. That's a lot of the JP thing more than the type of horse.
Yeah.
So...
Jerry Colomb, he's never going to beat Galopin des Champs if Galopin des Champs runs to his best, in my opinion. I actually think Fast or Slow is the value in the Gold Cup at the moment, because he's right in the mix with Galopin.
And he's beaten him a few times, hasn't he? But not at Cheltenham.
And he's Galopin 4 times the price or something. He's like 12 to 1. And I do think I Am Maximus is a fascinating horse, because I just think he keeps surprising people how good he is.
I think we all assume he'll go for the National again, but could you do both? Could you go to the National via the Gold Cup?
Of course you did, yeah.
You see,
been done,
again, we're all talking about the type of horses and what suits and all. You see, is JP going to let put Factifile and I Am Maximus both in the Gold Cup, where Galopin des Champs could beat the two of them and have nothing for the National? So,
also, Willie might have the trainer's title. Like, he could have it all wrapped up by Cheltenham, but if it's still a competition, Willie might be quite keen for I Am Maximus to be winning the Grand National again.
One horse we haven't mentioned here is a very, very good horse, is Grey Dawning, the Skelton.
I was about to say, we haven't mentioned any British horses so far.
Yeah.
Grey Dawning.
Grey Dawning is he was impressive in Cheltenham now.
So again, with him, I was at Worcester the other day and interviewed Dan, and I said to him, really, everything we've seen, the Ryanair is his race. But he could go in the Champion Chase again, he could go in the Gold Cup. And Dan said, there's only one Gold Cup, which was refreshing to hear, because it's a completely different topic, but we so much pigeonhole horses into, which is why we've got so many of these ridiculous Cheltenham Festival races, is that one horse has to have 2 mile 2, the next horse has to have 2 mile 2.5, the next horse has to have 2 miles 3, Whereas you go to Australia and you warm up for the Melbourne Cup over 7 furlongs and then you run them over 2 miles. And quite clearly, it's more about class than it is. Obviously, when you get to a certain class, you then need to be in a certain group of horses to perform to your best. But until you reach that, and I think Willie said this the other day, actually, that his feeling is as young horses, they can run in any distances. Their class will just bring them through. Once you become a Gold Cup horse, you know, Galopin des Champs not going to go and win the Champion Chase is really what I'm trying to say, although I wonder how far he'd be beaten.
Say, you know, when you really talk about the great champions, Dawn Run won a Gold Cup, Champion Earl at 2 miles. Then she won the Gold Cup at 3 1/4. And a month after winning the Gold Cup at a 3 1/4, she beat the Champion Chaser over 2 miles at Punchestown. So she went up from 2 miles to 3 1/4 and back to 2 miles, and it was all the one to her. That is a real champion.
Yeah. And Desert Orchid was placed in Champion Chases, and he, of course, famously went on to win the Gold Cup. But they weren't pigeonholed, and they were trained by people who wouldn't pigeonhole them. Whereas now, it's so specific, and I suspect it's all to do with statistics, and people have so much telling them, you've got to run this horse over this trip, otherwise you'll get nowhere. And I just think it's absolute nonsense.
But this is where a good jockey comes in. I mean, I've seen, you know, Aidan O'Brien change his opinion, having spoken to Ryan Moore after races. Horses that he was expecting to go up in distance, spoke to Ryan Moore, and they came back in distance and were better horses. You know, so, I mean, a trainer, while I'm one of the very few that knows everything, the rest of them have to be guided by their jockeys, you know. So,
well, you are the trainer of Kilcruit.
Well, I brought him along for Willie, so I did, yeah. And
your greatest training moment? Come on. You two are going mad now. I've gone off on a tangent.
I suppose the Princess Zoe winning the Group 1 in
that worked out well.
Paris. It was very funny, you know. It was the Prix de Cadran, which I had heard of before, but I didn't even know. Didn't even know it was the French Gold Cup. I was actually on the plane on the way home before I realised that is actually the French Gold Cup. That'll tell you. Yeah. But no, the training has become much more liaising with your jockey and getting your definite plan, but being willing to change your mind when you're wrong. The bull-headed ones keep going ahead with, you know, a thing when they know they should have switched because they don't want to be embarrassed. And I mean, I have no doubt that Willie, Aidan O'Brien, Nicky Henderson, Paul Nichols, these men change their mind when they have to. And that's what makes them great trainers.
On the basis of fresh information.
The basis of fresh information.
Or watching a show like this. You can imagine lots of trainers will watch this back and think, yeah, I'll be doing that now.
If you're looking for fresh information, new information, which will enhance your knowledge and understanding, there is one place to go. That is the dedicated attheraces.com jumps microsite, attheraces.com/jumps.
Yeah,
Loads
just
of good
to
stuff.
finish, we didn't give Grey Dawning enough of a chat there. He is a horse that comes into this, or will come into this scene. So it'll be interesting to see whether he goes Ryanair or Gold Cup. But I think Matt was saying that they think it's Gold Cup, and I'm delighted to hear that. He's a hell of a horse, this lad.
Yeah, I like him.
Yeah, he was very impressive.
Flamboyant.
Yeah.
Got a kick as well.
Yeah.
But his form mixes with Ginny's Destiny. And if you're thinking about Grey Dawning, you'd have to think about Ginny's Destiny as well, and not many people are. But Ginny's probably will end up in the
Does
run.
Grey Dawning look like a lad who's going more forward? I mean, he only half caught my eye at the early in the season last year. By the end of the season, he was the one on the.
I think we're all in that camp a little bit, aren't we? Like, I was a bit surprised.
He was a big improver all season.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
more impressive and seemed more assertive about it the further he went through the season.
Yeah. In all walks of life, once something catches Tony's eye, you have to watch out.
Or they do.
Grey Dawning, we're not giving up. It's great. The sole Irishman on the panel is flying the flag for Grey Dawning.
He just feels sorry for us, doesn't he? He's just got pity in his eyes.
You might hit the frame, lads.
He's only found one British runner.
I thought he's the one that might come out of it to save the British situation there in the Gold Cup.
I tell you what.
It's funny that we go through these races now. We don't even mention horses like Brave Man's Game and things, do we? Like, he doesn't even get a mention. Yeah. Poor old Brave Man's Game. Yeah. Anyway, move on. We
should move on. Let's talk about the staying hurdle division. Tiapu, I suppose, is the starting place. You're a Tiapu fan, aren't you?
Yeah, I absolutely thought he was a good thing for the Stayers Hurdle this year, and I would think that there's absolutely nothing to touch him should he turn up fit and well in 2025. And you know, Sean, again, we come back to the Constitution Hill, like, who would you rather back? Let's get back to it. 7-4 Constitution Hill, who we haven't seen for yonks, and we've no idea whether he can breathe or walk or anything. Or Tiapu, who's almost double the price for the Stayers Hurdle, is the defending champion, and he's clearly the best stayer out there. You know, to give an example, I mean, Lossiemouth is third or fourth favourite in some lists for the Stayers Hurdle. I mean, come the day, I could see Tiapu almost being odds-on for the Stayers Hurdle. I can't really see much ante-post at this minute to touch him, to be honest. I think he's miles better than everything else. Let's have a look at this list. I mean, Lossiemouth in this list, second favourite. Well, we know she's not going to run in it straight away, so let's rule out the second favourite. Irish Point, Ballyburn's not going to run in it. Strong Leader would have to start now. Florine Porter's already, you know, presumably going to be staying chasing after his romp the other day. And then you're into horses that just aren't going to win. I mean, and you've got 9-4 with talkSPORTBET. Well, you know, again, it all depends whether you want to be backing a 9-4 shot with months and months and months to wait just to treble your money sort of thing. But I mean, I've talked about the Stayers Hurdles. I think this horse will just go and win the Stayers Hurdle.
I can't even think how I can start arguing with him. I mean, he looks...
It's a bit tricky, isn't it? To look,
he looks a good thing. I mean, you know, as he says there, Irish Point and Lossiemouth and Ballyburn in the betting, sure. I don't even understand that.
Yeah. We've got a French horse in there, Losange Bleu. That didn't get beaten the other day. Thelem has been mentioned, if it comes back, Thelem, because they were intending to go here previously. I mean,
can you remember the second, third, fourth and fifth last year? If you can't, I will remind you. Florine Porter was second. Well, we know the chances are he's not going to go again, I think. But maybe he will. Yeah. But he's already been beaten by Tiapu. And we kind of know now that Florine Porter,
what age is he now?
He's 9, he'll be 10 next year. Okay. So he's probably had his moment in the herd, brilliantly ridden by Danny Mullins, stupidly taken off at some stage. Home by the Lee was third. Well, that's never going to beat Tiapu. Buddy One's in fourth. He's going novice chasing now. And Sarda Burley is, I think, retired now. He's 100 years old. And then you're into the likes of Asterion Forlonge and Noble Yates. I mean, the more you look at it, you kind of think, how's that 9-4? I mean, he just has to turn up.
I think you're only vulnerable if you get something like a Noble Yates turning up, something from left field, switching back.
They're not.
I am Maximus or something. Yeah.
I think you're talking about Tiapu himself not being well.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
If he's well, there's nothing there can touch him.
And he's perfect age as well. You think he's been around a bit, but he's 7 going on 8. Well, I mean, I don't train them like you do, Tony, thank God. You know, as far from horsey people point of view, I would think an 8-year-old who's already shown a bit, probably he's at the perfect age, and he'll probably be at his best next year.
Yes, yeah, and I would imagine he'll dance up to the 3-mile hurl in Gorn, the Galmai hurl, and away to Cheltenham, odds on.
You know, there's one horse actually that isn't on that list at all that was awful for most of last season, but started the season looking like he could become something special, and you just think, how did the wheels fall off? And that one would be Crambo, who's not on the list, but he's just... There was something at one point about him last season you thought, this is a really promising horse in the making. But who was reminding me the other day that who went off favourite for the long walk herd, or horse who ran at Worcester over fences for Dan Skelton. I can't remember. But the horse that ran at Worcester over Chase got beat, finished fourth. Anyway, that horse who started favourite for the long walk, you know, just the fact that that Skelton run, I'm going to look it up as I'm speaking now.
You look that up.
Really
I'll
annoying me.
Set up our next division. We're going to move divisions. We've slightly touched on it in passing. Good horses, good hurdlers going chasing now. The novice chase division, which is exciting. I think we have got some exciting horses this side of the Irish.
West Balboa. You know, just the fact that West Balboa was favourite for the long walk hurdle tells you how desperate this division is and what a big price Tiapu is. Right, continued.
I have to admit, I don't even know him.
Well, let's go closer to home. Let's start with the 2 mile novice chase division, the Arkle division, if you like. Is this going to be Ballyburn's game, do you think, 2 miles, or would you see him much more of a middle distance or even staying?
Well, I keep seeing him as a Flemonsford, which is stamina all over. But at the same time, he has the class to win an Arkle chase. So I would imagine, he'll be left out Winnie's 2 mile beginner's chase now, and then Paul and Willie will decide, you know.
You touched on, in passing, Kicking King and his flexibility over... It seems to me there used to be a time, and I used to really like horses who'd gone from the Arkle as novice chasers into that sort of staying division afterwards. Kicking King did it, War of Attrition did it. Those kind of horses who are quick over... Good, they've got the speed to...
War of Attrition just got beat in an Arkle.
Yeah.
Kicking King just got beat in an Arkle. They both won Gold Cups.
See it so much anymore?
Yeah.
Are we pigeonholing horses like Matt says? Saying
I hate pigeonholing horses. When my father was training, I was riding them. We'd have no problem going up and down in distance and up and back from hurls to fences, and that it was nearly unheard of that time for anyone else to do it. But we did it regularly and won a lot of races.
What's changed, Tony? Do you think its mentality has changed, or has our style of racing changed a bit because we're racing so far out that you can't?
I think trainers fear of losing horses because some media thing gets behind them, and that. I think trainers train more out of fear of losing the horse than doing the correct thing with him. It's become a thing there lately. You know, you do the wrong thing. I see horses being switched from yard to yard. Now, if you look at those horses that switch from yard to yard, nearly to a fault, not one of them have ever done anything.
Don't improve for it very often.
I'm sure you're going to name one out of the last 20 years, some horses that change because of a row. Have any of them ever come to anything?
Not many, I wouldn't say, no.
They're always transpires that it was the horse's fault in the first place. Or maybe what the trainer did with him, but they never... Switching mid-course, to me, is not good, for, you know.
Yeah.
Novice chasers for you that you're excited about, for the particularly in the sort of 2 mile division first?
I think we're going to go back to the Martin Pipe hurdle of last season. I think like almost all of the first 4 or 5 in the Martin Pipe will end up back over chasing this time around. I mean, there are lots of horses, I think, that are exciting novice chasers. I don't think there's a problem. I mean, is it Caliph de Burley, the Nichols horse who won it?
Caliph de Burley, yeah.
Yeah, Caliph de Burley. I think he's exciting.
Yeah.
I think, as I say, I think it boils down to that sort of better times ahead, those kind of horses from the Martin Pipe. And I think if you go down the Martin Pipe route, you'll get... Did Gaelic Warrior win the Martin Pipe, or did he win the other?
Short head, wasn't it? Or was it in that? Yeah.
Or State Man, one of those two. I can't remember. But I think that is a race that is going to throw up a lot of high class...
It's done over the last few years.
Yeah. So just to, if you're sat at home just thinking, OK, so we've got Better Times Ahead who won it. We've got Waterford Whispers in second. Quai de Bourbon, who I think is going to be a really good staying novice chaser. And Answer to Caif for Terence O'Brien in fourth. I think those 4 could all be really good novice chasers in the future, because the Martin Pipe is kind of the gambling race, isn't it? It's kind of like you need something that's better than it currently is to try and win that race. And I think they are 4 really exciting young novice chasers.
Let's throw up the Arkle for the sort of 2 mile novice chasers. Here's a funny thing about the Arkle betting. We've got in there Sergino.
He's going to start over hurdles, isn't it? But he could easily swap.
Yeah.
He only has to jump badly. If he jumps like he did at Aintree, probably he's not going to beat. I mean, it all again depends on Constitution Hill, doesn't it? But there's not much point in running Sergino against Constitution Hill, is there? I mean, if he's right.
If, God forbid, anything is amiss with Constitution Hill, that might encourage you to go chasing more with Sergino. Caldwell Potter, that big purchase in with Paul Nicholls.
Nicholls seems excited. So far, there have been some really rubbish sales of horses recently. The Caldwell horses so far have been an absolute disaster. And if you spent your money on any of them, you just did your conkers. And I mean, I laugh sometimes when I see the people involved, and I'm not going to name many names, obviously, but you see people turning up at the sales, spending 600,000 for people, and you think, crikey, I wouldn't ask them to go and buy me a pack of sweets.
You're not naming any, are you?
Well, I mean, it's unbelievable the people who get involved with, and obviously the gift here is not being able to find the horse. The gift here is being able to find the person who believes in you enough that they will give you hundreds of thousands of pounds and they think that you're going to help them. That's the gift. But, you know, the Caldwell sale was, I mean, Pied Piper. Who was the other Gordon Elliott horse that got sold? That was just... Yeah,
unbelievable.
But Pied Piper, someone was actually putting that up as, oh, well, he might go and win the Melbourne Cup. I mean, have you ever watched Pied Piper run a race? I mean, there is zero chance of him ever winning the Melbourne Cup. And yet someone had clearly convinced someone else that this horse might go and win the Melbourne Cup. I mean, it's unbelievable.
He wouldn't get into it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it wouldn't even matter. But anyway, so yes...
We're in the wrong game.
We're
throwing up the staying division, what we have been wrongly calling the RSA, but the Brown Advisory novices chase. If Ballyburn goes that route, 5-1 chance. Majborough we haven't touched on, Impere Passe.
So Majborough is a fascinating one, Tony, because Triumph Hurdle winner that is built like a chaser. And is that going to be the next Factor File? The horse who you know, just goes quickly into the chasing ranks?
Yeah, I don't know. You see, everybody loves...
I mean, you don't know. You'll be related to the man who trains it. If you don't know, how are we meant to know?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't agree that because he was a big, weak 4-year-old. I think he was a big, strong 4-year-old. And, you know, just because he's 16-2, 16-3 doesn't mean that he's going to go on. Ilite Hump is quite a small horse.
Yeah.
Jump and gallop for all day. Maybe this is so awkward he'd stick his forehead in the front of the first one. You know, you don't know. People seem to attach themselves to this big, noble-looking horse. Most of them have their own traits, you know, the good ones. So, I tell you, I usually dispense of the Triumph winner every year, and I'm usually right. I usually know.
Jay de Grugy is another I like, and if you wanted one who could go over shorter distances, Iberico Lord, he would be very interesting going chasing. You know, he's a pretty good hurdler, Iberico Lord. He ran the champion hurdle, didn't he, in the end? Won the big handicap at Newbury. He could be an absolute machine in 2 mile novice chases if he goes that way. I mean, I can't see the point in him staying hurdling, really. He's not gonna win the champion hurdle. And he had size and scope about him. I imagine they can't wait to get him over a fence.
Jukebox Man I'd throw in, who ran very well.
Well, the Jukebox Man is the only British novice hurdler who finished in the first 5 in any novice hurdle at the 2024 Cheltenham Festival. The only British in the first 5 in any. But the thing with the Jukebox Man is, of those novice hurdlers, he probably ran in the weakest novice hurdle. But look, I think he's exciting, and he ran well at Aintree. I think it's good for the sport to have someone like Harry Redknapp with a good one. Doesn't matter whether you like Harry or not. I actually really love Harry. I think he's a great character. But I'm a Spurs fan. And I really wanted Harry to be managing England. And there aren't many people who I think have been, was he 1-8 in the betting to manage England and didn't get the job? I mean, imagine you're training a 1 to 8 shot and you get beat. It's hard. Imagine being that long odds on to get the England manager's job and not get it.
Big year for Ben Pauling, who had a very good season last season. Just starting to warm up. What you need to do is check out their stable tour. The Ben Pauling stable tour is up. One of the early candidates up on attheraces.com/jump. There's a few horses of his that I like for the year ahead, alongside the Jukebox Man. One or two names that I think might come up before the end of the programme, if I'm not mistaken. Let's have a look at some novice hurdlers, which is tricky, obviously, because we're dealing with.
You kind of head to the bumper, don't you, and just say, OK, well, the first 10 in the bumper will win the novice hurdle.
Before we throw out the betting, just a verdict on that, because the year before bumper worked out very, very well. This year's 2024 Cheltenham champion bumper, Tony, not so hot, really.
No, they were quite tight together, and I suppose whichever will jump the best, obviously.
Were they all kind of beating each other?
They are, yeah. They were in a lump last year. There was no superior bumper horse. So.
No.
But then you have...
Well, there was, but it was a ridiculous one. There was Redemption Day, who beat all the bumper horses from Cheltenham. Can I just ask you, with Redemption Day, why would a trainer run a horse in bumpers for 3 years? Is it because it can't jump, or is it because that trainer knows the other bumper horses are no good?
Well, obviously he saw that, the bumper division, something must have happened when, the natural progression is to go on hurdling, but something must have happened in his schooling and he kept him bumpering. It wouldn't be a thought-out plan anyway, I can tell you that.
It's an odd one, isn't it? It's a bit of...
Yeah.
Have you any novice hurdlers that you're looking forward to, that you've heard on the grapevine, or that you...
A 3-year-old hurdler won in France yesterday, a horse by Massar. Is it Massar that won the Derby? The New
Massar, yeah.
A horse won in Campion yesterday for JP and Noel George called Stencil.
Ah.
He was very impressive yesterday. Did the usual JP thing around the back in last place, turned into the straight, came through him like a dose of salts and won on the bridle. Now, he actually didn't jump well early on, but he was a little free, so...
Yeah.
But when he let him go coming up the straight, which is a long straight in Compiègne, he was impressive there yesterday.
They've got some exciting horses, haven't they? Noel George has, but so has JP this year. Novice Chasers, we've touched on loads.
I think we've got to mention Palladium as well for Hendo, this horse that cost a fortune, that he's just got, who won the German Derby, was it? And then got absolutely stuffed when last seen. And who's to know why that was? Maybe there was an issue with
the
the horse.
1.4 million that it wasn't any.
I mean, if that horse can jump, if he can jump, well, he should stay. He stayed a mile and a half in the mud at Hamburg or wherever it was. If he can jump, then, we've had that period of a lack of good flat horses jumping. He could be almost impossible to beat. One run into the... Well, how many runs? Do you have to have 4 runs to get in the Triumph Hurdle these days? Or so? I don't know. But silly rules, they change every year. But he could blitz the Triumph Hurdle field if he can actually jump.
If he jumps.
If he jumps.
But I mean, he's... there's a lot of horses have tried this and...
He's miles better than Burdett Road on paper. And Burdett Road... ran well against Sergino in the trial last year and has actually turned into a very good flat horse this time around Burdett Road. You don't have to, not every good flat horse can jump. Not every good flat horse becomes a good jumps horse. Some terrible flat horses become great jumps horses. Make a Stand, probably the most classic example. But it's not impossible. This Palladium could be very good. And I think there are a few JP McManus novice hurdlers that are going to come popping out that we don't even know.
One I was very impressed with, I think he's in Willie's now, a horse called Kawa Boomga.
Yeah.
Kawa Boomga. He ran the week before Cheltenham in Otay in an unraced hurdle for horses that had never run in a hurdle race. He came through, finished third, absolutely eaten up the ground, and the second horse has won his next 3 races, including a Group 1 in Longchamp. Now, albeit it was restricted to AQPS horses, but he's won his next 3 runs. It's a top-class run. I don't know now. I had a go at buying him anyway, and my checkbook couldn't stretch far enough. And it was just one of those horses that you see every few years. Absolutely took the eye out of my head. Cowaboomga.
Romeo Coolio is another one. Gordon Elliott horse, who was 5th behind Redemption Day at Punchestown, 2nd at Cheltenham. I suspect that's going to be quite a good jumper. I mean, he's good. The thing is, there are certain horses, Boyce, like Romeo Coolio, will win a novice hurdle first time out, will probably win another one, then it will be in a Grade 1, and then that's the case.
But the horse I mentioned has already jumped. We know he can jump. He motored in his only bumper, I think, in Leon d'Angers, has a pedigree by Tunis out of a Saint de Saint-Mère. So he has it all.
Yeah.
And
so
he's a horse I'd be watching for. And if you were all these long-range ante-posts, if I was backing anything long-range of the young horses for Cheltenham's, Cowaboomga is the
Cowaboomga with
and Gordon Elliott has already mentioned Wingmen as a horse to follow.
OK, we touched on Palladium, the very, very expensive ex-German flat horse who's now with Nicky Henderson. What else is with Nicky Henderson? You can find out on the Stable Tour, of course, which is another that's already up and running on the website. We've got Gary and Josh Moore, Lucinda Russell, Niels are up there, Paul Nichols is up there, but you've got to check out the Hendo Stable Tour. Compulsory reading on attheraces.com/jumps. Right, we've reached that stage of proceedings where we need a few of your horses to follow, I think, for the season, some long-range thoughts. Let's start with you, Tony, and we've asked you to have a look at maybe an ante-post fence, maybe a horse to follow for the season, and you've come up with a few for us, a novice prospect to look at. We might be picking up where we just left off. We can have a look at...
Yeah, well, I'm talking about Cowaboomga as the new novice that nobody has heard of yet. And I'm sure he'll be in Willie's. He's in JP's colours. I'm pretty sure he's in Willie's. He was very impressive last year. He's had a run over hurls, so he's what I call the second season. It's a huge advantage.
Yeah. So an experienced novice, a novice with a bit of
a novice with a bit of experience.
Excellent.
And
give us an ante-post pick, something that
an ante-post
might be priced up.
I would say Stencil was very impressive in Compiègne during the week. So Stencil for me.
He'll be a 4-year-old Triumph
George.
horse.
Yeah. He'll be a 4-year-old for the Triumph. I'm hoping that
he's double digits for the Triumph at the moment, somewhere I guess between 14 and 20 to 1, something like that.
Yeah, and he was very impressive yesterday. I don't know whether he's coming to be trained in England or whether he's staying with Noel George, but he was impressive to me.
Excellent. And what horse are you going to follow through the season? A horse for the season?
Well, I'm a big fan of Factophile. I think he has to come on from his RSA run. Up to that, I thought he was God Almighty, and now he has to go back and prove it to me again, but I think he will.
Hold on. People wind back now and you went off him. Now you're back on him again. You are fickle.
I didn't
fickle,
go
Mullins.
off him. What I said was I wasn't impressed with him in the RSA. Or the Brown Advisory, we should get that right.
He's being a critical friend, what we call a critical friend. He's still a friend of the horse, but being analytical.
Remember those words from earlier in the show, people. This is the difference between me, Boyce, and Chapman. Crikey.
I just think that he underperformed in the Brown Advisory and he has to get back to his peak, and if he does, he'll rattle-gattle.
Falling off and crashing is something that you're familiar with. Just because I've heard this story once before on a Cheltenham preview. Just tell us about your dad, because it wasn't always about horsepower, but it also cars. There was a day when you told your dad that his car would have a great trade-in value. What was his response?
He said, I don't know how you know anything about trade-in value because you've crashed every car you've had. You've written off every car you've ever had.
You are a terrible driver. Right, yeah.
I think he was telling the truth.
Oh, well.
No wonder he came off to
a worth out of them. Matt, we've asked you to do the same. Horse to follow, novice you're looking forward to. Ante-post selection.
So the horse to follow is, well, the ante-post is a horse obviously everyone is familiar with. I was very lucky. It's the best part of my tipping year was at Cheltenham, and just luckily I latched onto the Skeltons, and so it went brilliantly. But I don't really understand why Protectorat is the price he is for the Ryanair. He's always been very high class. He's been placed in Gold Cups in the past. He was totally dominant in the Ryanair. And those that are above him in the betting at the moment, I actually don't think will probably end up in it. Because, I mean, John Bon, for instance, I think I'd be very doubtful if they end up in the Ryanair with John Bon. He's not a pensioner. He's still going to be trained for the day. I don't care what he does until Cheltenham, because Skelton has got this knack that some trainers have of just readying one for the Cheltenham Festival, getting it ready. We all know Langer Dan right now has got toothache and ulcers, and it's got warts and verrucas, but they'll all disappear the week before Cheltenham and the price will come crashing down, and I expect that will be the same with Protectorat. So I think he's a great anti-post bet for the Ryanair, because if he's fit and well, that's the race he's going to run in, and there's no way he'll be double digits. I'm keeping the faith for Redemption Day, even though presumably he can't jump, because he's been on the flat for years. But the fact that Willie hasn't sent him to Australia to run in anything suggests that he hopefully can jump a little bit. And I like Kim Bailey as a trainer a lot. He's another guy who seems to always pull something out at Cheltenham. I don't know whether the Kemble Brewery will be good enough for Cheltenham, but I was at Worcester the other day when he absolutely hacked up. It's going to be different. Here, look at this horse here in the pink on the far side. This was his only slightly iffy jump, but he pinged everything else. The guy on top, Tom Bellamy, is now the new #1 for Kim Bailey. The horses are being ridden in a slightly different way to David Bass used to do. This horse seemed to love just being held up off the pace. He's powered to the line. It wouldn't surprise me at all if this isn't the most talented horse in the Kim Bailey yard, and that's including the likes of Chianti Classico, who won at Cheltenham. And if he is the most talented horse in the Kim Bailey yard, he is going to win bundles this season. I think he's really good.
I've got a related contingency to that horse, because one of my horses to follow also has form with Duranson.
Right.
A horse who I thought
who was second in that race.
Yeah, I thought might make your shortlist. Royce, trained by Ben Pauly.
I thought you were going to say Git.
Well, I was sitting in this very seat here in the studio. You were at Newbury when this horse was strode into the parade ring, and even you could see how impressive this horse was physically.
Agreed.
Went out and won really nicely, beat Duranson. He was getting away from Duranson that day. Gitmaker, I was really impressed with how Snowden campaigned a few really good horses. The ill-fated That's All Right Gino, Garlaw, and this horse, Gitmaker. Gitmaker's kind of hit the crossbar, but they will win a big one with him this year. I'll follow him this year. Probably a Welsh national, something like that. So Gitmaker for me is one to follow. And you latched onto the Skeltons last year. I'm latching on a bit to Ben Pauling's team. Apologies, Ben, because Diva Luna, I think, was a very, very exciting bumper mare last year. Mare's Novice Hurdle. Interestingly, Ben Pauling, when you look at his stable tour, says she'll run in either the Mare's Novice or the Supreme, or the 2.5. That's what they're thinking of in terms of the quality of this mare. She's done everything right. They started off in a very high quality race. She's won 2. I think she's very exciting for an English team that I hope have a big year. They've got lots of big horses for the year. Now, we've touched on lots of different horses for different races and different categories. If you're looking to have a bet, our friends at talkSPORTBET have enhanced some prices for you. These are the talkSPORTBET price boosts. Constitution Hill, you can have 2-1 for the Champion Hurdle. Terms and conditions apply, and singles and what have you. John Bon up to 9-2 for the Champion Chase. 11-4 Tierpo, 7-2 Galopin des Champs. I don't think we spent enough time on how good that horse is, did we? Could be a best mate, could be a Quarto Star quality horse. Probably already is, isn't he? Protectorat, 16-1 if you want to follow Matt in on that. And if you want to
He's not Quarto Star, come on.
And if you want to follow Diva Luna in, 18-1.
Quarto Star was a champion, a real champion.
Here's a question then. Who's better, Best Mate or Quarto Star? Quarto Star, yeah?
I'd rather have owned Quarto Star.
Yeah. So just because you win 3 Gold Cups doesn't mean necessarily you are best of the best.
No, that's true. That's true. But I think I've been slow to appreciate how good Galopin.
We need to start this whole show again.
Occasionally gets beaten. We don't have time to go.
Tierpo 11-4 there, and Protectorat 16-1 on the boost. I mean, I think Protectorat each way for the Ryanair at 16 is a really good anti-post bet, because you know your horse is running there as long as it's alive.
I can't believe I'm agreeing with Matt here. The enhanced ante-post is a giveaway. It's a horrible
11-4.
feeling, isn't
Horrible
it?
way to end, isn't it?
Horrible way. This show's gone very badly. With Blake, it's abuse from start to finish, but Tony's come round. Stuff we put in his tea has worked.
I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it. Many thanks, Tony, for coming all the way over. Really appreciate your participation.
Well, thanks to you popping in eventually, Sean.
Yeah, well, I made the effort because it was nearly 12 miles I've had to come.
And it felt like 12 days.
Thanks, Matt, for your company as ever.
No,
We look
really
forward
good.
to the season. This is it. We're about to get very, very excited. The National Hunt season is underway, is in full swing. All of these stars, we hope we'll see them. Thanks for your company. Thanks for watching our At the Races Jumps preview show in association with talkSPORTBET.